Duke making another statement. 11-0 in the ACC for the number 2 team in the nation. Flagg was great. Knipple was great. Everybody who played for the Blue Devils did a lot of good things for them, and they beat Carolina handily here tonight.
Duke basketball returns this Saturday against North Carolina in the second matchup of the season. It's always one of my favorite games of the year. It's the last game of the regular season always, and it's your lead into the ACC tournament. And you've got a pair of teams that have won 7 straight games for Duke and 6 straight games for North Carolina. And North Carolina desperately needs this win to really solidify their NCAA tournament chances. And Duke needs this win to guarantee the outright ACC championship during the regular season and the number 1 seed of the ACC tournament. So those are our stakes, JD. What are you thinking? What are your number 1 thoughts coming into this game with North Carolina?
That I'm going to have to watch it on TV because I checked the ticket prices, and if you want to sit up in the nosebleeds, it's $300 to $500. If you want to get down to a good seat, it'll be $5,000. So I think I'll be very content watching this one on TV and getting as excited as I normally do for the Duke UNC games, which, as Jay Billis would say, never disappoint. His favorite phrase for this, but you're absolutely right. This is UNC fighting for an opportunity to get into March Madness, because without this win and without some miraculous showing in the ACC tournament, look at it. It's NIT, baby.
Yeah, I mean, if they lose this game, they would have to beat probably like Clemson and Louisville. I'm not sure how. It depends on how it shakes out. They're currently tied for 4th in the ACC. So depending on what happens with SMU and the tiebreaker, I don't know which side of the bracket they would end up on, depending on the result Saturday. So they may have to win the ACC tournament to get in. And they may still have to, even if they beat Duke, I think they could win a couple games and probably get in as an at-large. But they still like, it wouldn't be so cut and dry that if they beat Duke, they could, lose an ACC tournament game early. I don't know. They would still be pretty firmly on the bubble. Because I think that would just be their second quad 1 win of the season.
There, not that the NCAA selection committee ever does anything for the benefit of television and eyes on the tournament. That never happens. But having UNC or Kentucky, be a close call, I think there's if they get this win, I think they're going to be pretty much heading to the NCAA. They don't get this win, it's going to be almost impossible. So let's break down Saturday night, because it is Duke UNC, and couldn't be more excited.
And I think it's established this is a different Duke team. You asked that question heading into the Wake Forest game. It was answered. And this is also a different North Carolina team. Now, I'll get into later the difference between the two teams in terms of how well they've been playing as of late. But first off, North Carolina has a different starting lineup than the last time around against Duke. They have more size in their starting lineup. Still have RJ Davis and Elliot Cadeau, so still playing 2 small guards, which is going to be tough against the size that Duke has in their backcourt.
This is RJ Davis's 8th year?
It's his 5th. It's his fifth, and I don't know if you heard this, a little bit of a tangent, but Corey Alexander, one of our favorite commentators, for last year spent the whole year saying, Baycott's records, they have an asterisk, and I agree. In the last game I saw when he was covering North Carolina, he said, I'm taking off the asterisk on RJ Davis because he said he was reminded that freshmen used to, not be able to play, then they were able to play, and now, they get, 4 years and all the other guys were 3. And I was like, okay, but I don't think moving forward people are going to be playing 5 years. So I still think the asterisk is appropriate on RJ Davis's scoring records. Great player, but I think he's getting close to passing JJ Redick on the scoring list, and I think that's where I draw the line. Okay. All right. So those two guys they've maintained their spot in the starting lineup. What's different is Drake Powell and Jalen Withers. And those two guys have been playing exceptionally well for North Carolina since moving into, consistently into the starting lineup, especially with Jalen Withers, who Hubert Davis, he went through a number of ideas in different lineups against Duke. It really wasn't until he put Withers into the game when North Carolina was able to trim the lead from, it was definitely over 30. And then they ended up closing, and it didn't look quite as bad when they lost by 17. But since then, he's been giving Withers more playing time, and he's responded. He's been their leading rebounder over this 6-game winning streak for North Carolina. He's at 12 points and 7 rebounds, respectively. And most importantly, this is the biggest difference with North Carolina compared to the first game. They're shooting the three much better as a team, and that has been led by Jalen Withers, who's shooting 57% from 3 on this 6-game winning streak and making over 2 threes per game. And he's not the only guy shooting above 50% from 3 on this winning streak. You also have the aforementioned Drake Powell, who's at 54% from 3, just over 1 make per game. And most importantly, Ian Jackson, who's been coming off the bench, playing about 21 minutes per game, he's been their Isaiah Evans. 14 points, and during the 6-game winning streak, 61% from 3 on nearly 3 makes per game. So he's been shooting the lights out from 3, and I like, for North Carolina's sake, not for Duke's sake, but I like him coming off the bench and being a spark plug type scorer in that Evans type role. I think it makes more sense. It gives them more size in the lineup with Withers starting. And then their last starter, I should say, is Ven-Allen Lubin, who's been at 22 minutes a game, 12.6 rebounds. He did start the game against Duke. The first game, I should say.
It's definitely a different look, but I've lost track. I think it's 7 games now that we've won by more than 30 points. And an average of more than 30 points.
I'm going to get to that. Save that thought. I'm going to get to that. Don't worry.
Well, okay. But, I mean, I'm also going to say we're not the same team. That's all.
I agree. And I've got the numbers. Just give me a few minutes. We're going to set this up. So, Seth Trimble has also been playing really well during this winning streak. 24 minutes a game off the bench for 5 of the 6 games. 11 points, 5 rebounds, and a steal. Trimble and Withers were the two guys who, like in last year's games, they were the X factors. Yes, Harrison Ingram had the one game where he went crazy. I think he had 5 threes, and then the other game it was Cormac Ryan. But those two guys they were the difference makers in terms of rebounding and defense and like the in-between stuff. And so I think those are two guys to watch out for. Jalen Washington has hit, I think, 3 of his 5 3-pointers on the season during this wing streak. He shot the ball well from 3 last year. Just he has not really looked to shoot it this year, coming off the bench. And Cade Tyson has shown some flashes for them during these during the 6-game winning streak. He's played in 5. He's just looked much more confident out there than he did prior to these games. So they're coming off a game where they beat Virginia Tech pretty handily, and they made a season high 15 threes. So they are going to be coming into this one feeling pretty good. Obviously, so is Duke with their performance against Wake Forest. As you said, both teams are not the same. And the one thing I think that is certainly not in North Carolina's favor, before I get into the stat that I was talking about before, they like to play at a high pace. And we've seen, and during Duke's winning streak, is not a good idea to play at a high pace against Duke. And unfortunately for North Carolina, it's the only way that they can play, because they, even with the starting lineup change, they're still small. So they can't play a half-court game against Duke. That's a bad idea as well. So they're going to have to play really fast, and they're going to have to make a bunch of threes to have a chance against Duke, which, even after I said it, doesn't sound like a great idea based off of the fact that it just seems like, that's North Carolina's best. That's their best way to play. But we've seen from Duke, good luck, trying to play that style against this Duke team as of late.
Well, and with this killer instinct, this intensity that's resulted in several 100-point games for Duke. But we also know that Duke can, you want to go slow and you want to go physical with us? Fine. We're happy to do that. We'll keep the game in the 70s. You want to go fast? We'll put up more points. So I think it's going to be a tough decision for Coach Davis to be able to say, how do we do it? But listening to your breakdown, I think they have no choice but to go fast, and it'll be, if it's only one, it'll be fine. If it's 2 guys that are just unconscious from 3, as seems to always happen in the UNC Duke game, except the most recent 87-70 game, then it will be annoying, but we're going to complete the North Carolina revenge tour with this win in UNC in Chapel Hill.
That's right. 4 down, 1 to go, unless, ACC tournament or even the NCAA tournament, as has been the case the past couple of years. All right. So this is what I want to get to. So 7-game winning streak for Duke, 6-game winning streak for North Carolina. But who have they played? Duke, the records for the teams that Duke has beat over this 7-game winning streak, 176. That's the combined records of the 7 teams before the losses that they took against Duke, okay?
You said 100 wins, 76 losses?
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
Thanks for the clarification. So, North Carolina, the record of their 6 opponents combined, 69 wins, 91 losses.
Ooh, good stat, Jack.
I got a couple more. So, as you alluded to, the margin of victory during this 7-game winning streak for Duke is 31, well, let's round up, 32 points per game. That's the margin of victory on average, which is insane.
Right.
The margin of victory for North Carolina during their 6-game winning streak is 18 points per game.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Now, here's where the rubber meets the road. So, in their respective winning streaks, they have 3 common opponents. They are Virginia, Florida State, and Miami. And by the way, Miami really brings down both teams' opponent records, right? It's part of it. Let's just be honest. In those 3 games, the margin of victory for Duke, 30 points. The margin of victory for North Carolina, the average, I should say, 15. There is even with North Carolina playing better, there is still a big difference between these two teams. And I know we'll get to our score predictions in a little bit, but I don't see the result. The score might be closer, but I don't see the result changing in this game against North Carolina.
Was Malik Brown available?
He was.
He played. Yeah. All right. So that's one thing. Won't be the same. And always important, yet this entire insane run by Duke has been without Malik Brown.
And Patrick Gongba has played really well. He's not. They're different players, but Gongba has, he's a rebounder. He can pass, and he's got good hands and can finish really well around the basket. And so, I mean, there's always the chance that Malik Brown is back for this game. We don't know, but I don't think so. There's just the chance. So. Just because, I didn't think Proctor would be back for the game on Monday. Now, Malik's injury was certainly more severe, but, it's not out of the realm of possibility that he's back for this game on Saturday.
I was completely wrong about Proctor, and I think if you could, I think they will absolutely try to go without Malik Brown. That gives them 6 days, and then another 6 days until the first game in the ACC tournament, in which case
might be 5.
It's that they'll only have to play 3 times. They won't have to play 4, I think.
I don't know if it starts, if for Duke it would start Thursday or Friday if they play the championship on Sunday. I don't remember.
Right. But in any case, I think that holding him for another 11 days without the risk, dislocated shoulders are kind of strange in the way they heal. Insofar as it's got to feel solid, because if he extends his arm, we saw the play how many times of how he got injured, and it seemed as if it was just a flick of the hand, but his arm was fully extended. I would not be in favor, even though it would be nice to have him there. I would not be in favor of him playing until the ACC tournament as a tune-up for the first game that they have to play in March Madness. So I'm assuming we don't have him.
Right. I think that's fair. And I was curious. I went and looked it up. The championship game would be the following Saturday. So their first game will be that Thursday. So the following next Thursday will be the first game of the ACC tournament for Duke. So he would have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 4 days. So we were both wrong. But I don't know. I think if he's capable of playing, they'll play him, and we won't know that until Saturday night. So
just going to say, I was anticipating a lower seeded opponent for the first game of the tournament. That's actually why I was thinking there'd be an extra day. There would be no reason to play him.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
And I'd hold them for the semis and the finals, which would be, I know we're hoping we see Clemson, just to
Certainly.
get that dismissed. But no. So that's why I'm thinking hold them out as long as you can, in the hope that you can get him in for some minutes in the ACC tournament, and then he's ready to go in that. But we also have to think about it as a possibility that they just hold him out until the first round of March Madness, and then I hope he plays. We have not yet heard, as opposed to Tyrese Proctor, when there was definitely good news about Tyrese coming along really well, and sure enough, he showed up in the game. We have yet to hear that sort of like, he's ready to go, we're just holding him, we're being cautious, something. So I think they're going to be erring on the side of keeping him out for as long as possible, which is just fine, because I do want to win against UNC. I do want to win the ACC tournament. But if we do it without having to use Malik, and we get a healthier Malik Brown for the first round of March Madness, I'm willing to say that's fine with me.
Yeah, I agree. As of right now, Duke has the highest net rating on KenPom, and the farthest I can go back on there in the free version is 2002. The highest net rating. That's how dominant that Duke has been this season. Now, it could change, over the next series of games. Also, going back to your point on Clemson, that is actually, as the season has gone on, turned out to be, this is a strange thing to say, but the best loss that Duke has had this year. They're certainly better than Kansas. I know Kentucky's had some injuries, but Clemson beat Kentucky when Kentucky was healthy. So I think they're healthy for that game. They may have been missing somebody, but I think they're healthy. So that's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be an easy, game for Duke at all. I know Duke was at Clemson, and that'll be a big difference. And I also know, Cooper was sick and Mason Gillis was unavailable. So I think those things do matter. One other thing I wanted to point out for this game with North Carolina specifically was, while, to your point, we won't have Malik Brown, Isaiah Evans is playing much better as of late than he was going into that game with North Carolina. So I do expect we'll get something from Quick Draw in this game against North Carolina. And I think he'll be able to match some of the firepower from Ian Jackson, who I do expect to hit a couple of threes, certainly a couple of threes, especially in the home environment and how big of a game this is for North Carolina. It's their season's on the line. It's their senior night. It's their last home game of the season. There's a lot of pressure really on North Carolina for this one, certainly a lot more than Duke. And that can, this isn't a great analysis, but that can go either one or two ways. You'll either respond to it or you won't. And I'm very curious how North Carolina's going to handle it, because yes, they are on the 6-game winning streak, but as I went through, a few minutes ago, they haven't played anybody during that winning streak. So this is going to be a major step up in competition for them, and how will they respond? We know what Duke is going to do. I think we can be very confident in how Duke is going to play. It's going to be North Carolina raising their level to Duke, not the other way around.
So Jack, you went through the Tar Heel players. What about height? Do they have the height and size to contend with Malowich and
Gangba?
Or Gangba?
Well, I mean, you may not remember this, but something you pointed out from the North Carolina post game of the first game was, boy, you knew the size difference was big based off of their first starting lineup, but it was really apparent in that game. Now, putting Withers in helps, and starting Powell helps. They go. Davis is 6 foot 6'1". Cadeau is 6'1". Drake Powell's 6'5", maybe 6'6", and Withers and Lubin are 6'8" apiece. Lubin, this is a tough matchup for Lubin. He did have a couple of blocks in the first game against Duke. Give him all the credit for that. But this is a Malawatch game. It's got lobs to Mal written all over it. Because off the bench, Seth Trimble is a tremendous athlete. He plays much bigger than his size, but he's 6'3". Ian Jackson, somewhere around 6'3", 6'4". Jalen Washington is 6'10". But he's more comfortable shooting threes, I would say, than being inside.
So what you're saying is this is like lobbing a Big Mac to Charles Barkley.
That sounds good to me. I do think Withers, this is even hard to get out, could give Flag some trouble. And by some trouble, maybe Cooper scores 22 points instead of 30. They're really going to have to shoot the three well to have a chance. And we've seen with Duke's defense at times that they can give up threes. That's the one thing we've seen at times throughout the year, that teams can shoot the three well against them. North Carolina is shooting the ball well from three, and so there is a chance that carries into this game. But I think Duke knows that, and with Malawatch, it was great listening to Coach Forbes in his post game talk about, I think he referred to it as like the solar eclipse in the middle of the paint. He's just a very honest and upfront coach, and I enjoy his personality. And he's like, it just made things really difficult for us, because for Wake Forest, that is, because they're just not a great shooting team. So with Malawatch down there, it makes things really difficult. So North Carolina is going to be really dependent on their three-point shooting. The one thing I want to talk about before we get into our score predictions, I think it's worthwhile to mention Auburn lost last night to Texas A&M. It was a road game. Texas A&M is a very good team. They were a few weeks ago on the 2 line. They've lost a few in a row to great competition in the SEC. They beat Auburn. Auburn did not have Denver Jones, who I would equate to like Tyrese Proctor in terms of what he does for Auburn. He's one of their top 3, top 4 players. He's a great on-ball defender, and he can score for them as well. So it was a big loss for them not to have him. I still think Auburn is still the number 1 overall seed for bracketology purposes. The margin has certainly become a lot tighter, but I do think if Duke wins this game Saturday, they will be the number 1 in the rankings, the AP poll, come Monday.
So let's that Clemson loss was important because I don't know what it is, but there's always this pressure hanging over you if you've won 23 games in a row or something. Instead, they are so dominant right now. And with one more regular season game and then the tournament, potentially 3 more, you're going to want this killer instinct to continue for those 4 games. You're going to want to be peaking. No losses between now and the first round, and then hopefully our magical 6-game run through the tournament. So I do think that Duke is going to come out and play as well as they've been playing in the last 7 games, I think there is going, and I tend to agree with you because I always get it. Johni Broome also didn't play. He was in and out of that game, and as the coach of Auburn said, gotta love him. It's not like we really had to win that game in order to win, the seedings, So, he really did. They lost, and he was trying to minimize the importance of the loss, but the seedings will matter, Jack, I think, obviously based on also the performance in each respective tournament. And so do I think I think Duke will run the table, and therefore it's a question of what Auburn does for who gets the overall number 1 seed. I think we're going to win the next 4 games.
And I'm glad you brought up Johni Broome, because I think with his lackluster performance these past couple of games, quite frankly, I think this is, after the Wake Forest game, we were talking about player of the year, kind of a coin flip between Cooper and Broome. Not anymore. I think it's Cooper's to lose. And I think as long as Cooper continues to play the way he has been, I don't see Johni Broome, unless Johni Broome goes to another level and starts, having 30, 40-point performances or big rebounding games. I just think this is Cooper's to lose now.
Well, so I went and checked something as well, which is, remember when, certainly before this stretch, since the Clemson loss, a number of people were pointing out how Coop leads Duke in 5 categories: points per game, assists, rebounds, steals, and block shots. And every announcer has said, gee, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to finish that way. Going into the UNC game, he leads Duke in points per game, 19.6. So just a hair off of 20. Rebounds, 7.5 rebounds per game, which is just stunning. 4.2 assists, and he does lead in steals, 1.6, and in block shots, 1.2 to Balawach's 1.1. So he's back. He is leading in all 5 categories on Duke right now. And I just think this guy is otherworldly in how he's playing. And I think here's where I think Flag is going to go in the next 4 games. I think Coop is going to now take it up another level.
Probably.
And then have his mindset where he wants it to be for March Madness. There will be no can't believe it, he only had 10 points, 4 rebounds, played a horrible game, Duke lost. No. We've talked about Cooper Flag many times about one of the reasons that we equate him, although there's many, you're constantly being pressed for who is he the most like? And you've said it's probably LeBron James. Not because...
Still crazy, but Cooper is that good. It's the only guy I can get to.
Right, and it's not because they play exactly the same way.
Right.
It is simply because they understand the game so well that they understand exactly what they have to do in order to win. And I think Cooper is still ascending. Yes. This isn't he's not even he's not nearly near his peak. So, okay. I'm going to give you a really crazy one. I'm going to come out with it right now. So we've got one more game with UNC. I think we win. Then it's his play through the tournament and then the ACC, and then the play through March Madness. And I think he straps us on his back along with an incredible supporting cast. But the Cooper Flag we see over the next 10 games will be reminiscent of a certain UConn player.
I don't know where you're going.
Okay, so the UConn player who won 11 games in a row.
Oh, okay. I know where you're going now. I know exactly where you're going now. Kemba Walker.
Kemba, not the same player. And we're being very careful about saying that with regard to LeBron. Not the same player. But Kemba's role through the Big East and then through the national championship, I think that's what you're going to see out of Cooper Flag, knowing most likely that this is his last time playing in college.
Yeah. All right. I have a couple of things from what you said. Number one, I don't know if you know this, but Cooper was actually behind Malawach in blocks by 1 block going into the Wake Forest game. And since I think he had 2 or 3 and Mal had 1, he passed him. So now he's back in the lead in all 5 categories. Now, here's one that I'm going to go out on a limb and say you don't know the answer to this question. And I'm going to leave a little bit of space. So if anybody is out there, watching the video and you want to drop a comment who you think this player is before I reveal it, please do. So there is one other player in college basketball who's leading their team in points per game, rebounds per game, assists per game, steals per game, and blocks per game. Do you know who that is?
No, I was thinking it was one of the Rutgers guys, and then I said they got to divide those categories because they're both good, and so it can't be the Rutgers guys.
It is Yaxel Lendeborg of the University of Alabama, Birmingham. They are 19-10 on the season, and his numbers are pretty similar to Cooper Flag. 17 points a game, almost 11 rebounds, 4 assists, 1.6 steals, 1.8 blocks for Lendeborg. Now he is a senior, so I think Cooper Flag, he's just on another level. Okay. The other thing I want to make sure I mentioned is a lot of times on the broadcast they'll talk about Flag. Is this the best freshman year ever? And a lot of times they talk about Carmelo Anthony because he won the national championship with Syracuse, and they play a sort of similar position. I think what word do I want to use? I think it is unfair to Anthony Davis that he's not listed in that conversation. Because what Anthony Davis did that 1 year at Kentucky, and a more similar team to what Duke is, they had a number of freshmen who were part of the team, like Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. They had some veterans kind of fill in the missing pieces. He averaged over 4 blocks a game. He was their leading scorer. I think we should give a little bit more credit. And then he played so well, he was a part of the Olympic team after an injury. Kind of like Cooper in terms of getting, being able to play with those guys really early on. So I think I wanted to give a shout out to Anthony Davis because he was outstanding in college as well. And lastly, unrelated, I want to say Spencer Hubbard. In the postgame, we were talking about, does he have a year, right? I completely forgot. And in Coach Shire's postgame press conference, he mentioned how they honored him last year, and that's why they didn't do it this year. So I just want to make sure I got that off. But it also gives me an opportunity to say, I think one of the things that has made Duke so special this year is we've talked a lot about Gillis and Sion James and Malik Brown, how those three guys have been, I think the word you like to use is like stabilizers. I think Coach Shire refers to them as like connectors. Whatever word you want to use, they've been really important, veteran leaders for Duke. I think underrated has been having guys like Spencer Hubbard and Stanley Borden, who've been around since Coach K, Anil Begovic, he's in his 6th year of college basketball. And the reason I say that is because in a lot of the post-game interviews, whether it's Con Knipple or Isaiah Evans, they give a lot of credit, or Gangba, they give a lot of credit to these guys. Isaiah Evans mentions how he felt like his defense got better because he got to work after every practice on guarding Spencer Hubbard. And that makes a ton of sense to me. The guy's lightning quick, and you're probably not going to see anybody that quick, and that helps. Gangba was talking about how Begovic has helped him with his game after the Wake Forest matchup, and talked about how, he's helped him with some of the little things and just kind of like staying in his ear. So I think, having these veteran leaders who don't play, but they're just part of they're players. They're not coaches, which I think is an important difference. And it makes them more relatable to the younger guys, has been really important for Duke this year.
And it's a really good point. To say, and I'm going to take that to a slightly different place, which is why I think we're going to go on a 10-game winning streak and cut down the nets at March Madness, cut down the nets at the ACC tournament. One sec. I think deliberately throughout this entire season, we have nitpicked. We have looked at Cooper Flagg to try to say why he may not be as good as everyone says he is. I think he is that good, but why this team will win 10 games in a row is because of how it was constructed. And it is one of the most unique things that I have seen where we follow it so closely, but it is the combination of the recruiting class, which was unbelievable, the ability to go into the portal and bring in the stabilizers. Malik Brown, that's why I want him to rest and be ready until we need him. We don't need him right away. But Malik Brown, Sion James, and Mason Gillis. So you have the people that they were able to recruit. You have the 3 stabilizers. And then to your point, there were the sort of like the 4th element, the guys that aren't likely to play. Thank goodness Duke was winning by 30 points a game, and we actually got to see him on the court. And then there's even that little group in between, which is we kind of know where Shire's going with
I don't know where you're going.
Darren Harris has been starting to show why he's good. And unfortunately, there's, the original starting guard for this year's team,
Caleb Foster.
Caleb has been going the other way, except that if they need him, he'll be on the court, but at the moment, not in the, as we used to say about Coach K, not in the circle of trust.
Okay.
So it is such a unique team that has so many, it's so well designed. And I don't know if they knew that in the beginning of the year. They said, okay, these are guys we got to get from the portal. These are the guys that we've recruited. These are the guys that are still here. And yet the team that we have right now, there are Duke teams, certainly 91, 92. That was a phenomenal. They won 2 national championships with Christian Laettner, with Bobby Hurley, with Grant Hill. I mean, they're just phenomenal. This team, if I'm right, they win 10 in a row, will be remembered as being that good.
The only correction I was trying to make for you is that it would actually be 17 in a row if they're going to do what you're talking about. Because there'd be 4 more, right? Regular season, 3 more ACC, and then the 6. So it would be a 17-game winning streak to end the season. And we'll see what happens there.
No, we're Duke fans. It's time for us to say, okay, we've been cautious. Maybe this is a game. They won't win. But no, they're going to go on this magical run. And it's time to say it.
The reason I say that is because I know you obviously feel differently, but I don't actually mind if they drop an ACC tournament game to specifically Louisville. If Louisville were to get hot from 3, because we know they shoot a ton, I don't think that would happen. I'm just going to say I think it wouldn't be the worst thing going into the tournament for them to be motivated again and ready to go. If you think back to, UConn, I think I don't remember exactly how many they won last year in a row before, but not every tournament champion, NCAA tournament champion, has won their conference tournament. It's not necessarily a requirement. Okay. Score predictions. I'll go first this time because I think last time you went first. So make sure to drop your score prediction in the comments. We will be giving the winner at the end of the year, the person who's gotten the most score predictions, a piece of Duke swag. So make sure to drop your score prediction. I'm going to go with Duke 95, North Carolina 72. I think it ends up being a worse final score than the first matchup. Initially, I will be honest, I wrote down 95-82, and then I said to myself, this Duke team is not giving up 82 points. It would be more likely that it was 85-72, but with the way that they're scoring and North Carolina's defense isn't great, I think they'll get to 95.
So I think we're pretty close again, but what was happening for me is I was thinking about the final score being 87-70 when they last played and they were home. And that they had, it really wasn't that close. They won by 17. So I think being that we're on the road, it'll be a 90-70 win. We're going to win by 20 points, and only because we're on the road. But it's this Duke dominance, which I have now said, it'll end the regular season revenge tour, and Lawrence Friedman will be very happy that we completed it. But it's just the start. It's just the start. As your mother would say, it's Kemba time. And I think that Coop's march through both tournaments is going to be reminiscent of how incredible that was. If you're right, then I'm going to use a different reference, which, boy, no one's going to think of, which is, so they drop a game. They don't win the ACC tournament, but they still win the March Madness and the national tournament. And then I'm going to the way that Glenn Rice played for Michigan, which is still my favorite. He averaged 30 points a game, and it is still one of the most remarkable tournament performances So
I'm only
I go
laughing
back.
because I knew that's where you were going.
I know because I've been watching for years, and it's just remarkable. And the reason I don't go all the way back to the, the UCLA teams with Lou Alcindor before he was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Walton is there just wasn't that much competition, and so they were great players that became great pros, and Bill Walton would have been an even better pro if his body had only not created as much havoc as it did in terms of his ankle and all the other injuries he had to. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar just dominated in college and was an incredible pro.
All right. With that being said, we'll wrap it up here. We'll see you guys post game after the Duke North Carolina game, which should be roughly 8:40 Eastern Time Saturday, March 8th. So we will see you guys then. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Please give this video a like. It helps us grow. Drop your comments. We look forward to reading them and responding to them, and share it with your basketball friends. We will see you guys next time. Peace.